So here's a wild thought for you. What if the key to getting wiser wasn't about knowing more, but about knowing less? It sounds like a riddle, right? Well, it's actually one of the most profound ideas to come out of the entire Renaissance. So let's dive into this totally counterintuitive path to wisdom, the power of learned ignorance. This one sentence, right here, written way back in the 15th century by a philosopher named Nicholas of Cusa, well, this is our launchpad. This is the heart of a philosophy that says real knowledge, true knowledge, begins right at the edge of what we can possibly understand.
I mean, it's a total paradox, isn't it? How on earth can admitting you're ignorant be a sign of learning? And how does recognizing our own limits actually get us closer to a truth that is, well, limitless? That's the huge question we're going to unpack today.
All right, to really wrap our heads around this, we got to meet the guy who came up with it. Our guide for this whole journey is a thinker whose ideas were so far out there, it took literally centuries for the rest of the world to even begin to catch up.
Nicholas of Cusa, or Cusinus as he's sometimes known, wasn't just some philosopher locked away in a dusty room. Oh no. This guy was a cardinal in the Catholic Church, a top-tier diplomat who traveled to Constantinople, a serious collector of ancient Greek manuscripts, and even an innovator who helped kickstart the printing industry in Rome. He was the definition of a Renaissance man, and back in 1440, he wrote the book that would cement his legacy, Unlearned Ignorance.
Okay, so what did he actually mean by that strange phrase, learned ignorance? This wasn't about celebrating being uneducated or anything like that. It was an incredibly sophisticated way of thinking about the biggest questions of all. At its heart, Docta Ignorantia is this. Our finite little human minds just can't fully grasp something that is infinite, like God or absolute truth. Cusa argued that real wisdom isn't pretending we can. It's about knowing precisely why we can't. It's that moment our own reason just hits a wall and we have to admit there's something bigger beyond it. Now, to make this pretty abstract idea totally clear, Cusa used this absolutely brilliant analogy from mathematics. He said that our mind's relationship to the truth is exactly like a polygon's relationship to a circle. So picture a triangle drawn inside a circle. It kind of looks like it, right? It approximates the shape. Now let's increase the number of sides. Turn it into a square, then a pentagon, then an octagon. With every step, the polygon gets closer and closer to looking like the circle. You could give it 1,000,000 sides, and to our eyes it would look identical. But, and this is the absolute key, it will never be the circle. There will always be this tiny, infinitesimal gap. Cusa says our knowledge is that polygon. We can keep adding sides, more facts, more data, more theories, but we can only ever get closer to that infinite circle of truth. We can never, ever fully become one with it.
Okay, hang on, because this is where things get really wild. This whole idea has some seriously mind-bending consequences. If truth is infinite, Cusa argued, then it doesn't play by the same rules of logic that our finite little world does. And that brings us to his idea of the coincidence of opposites.
You know, in our everyday experience, things are distinct. Opposites are opposites. A line is either curved or it's straight. A thing is either big or it's small. But Cusa proposed that in the infinite, all those opposites, they merge. They become one. The absolute maximum is somehow also the absolute minimum. This is what he called the coincidentia oppositorum, the coincidence of opposites.
Let's use a classic geometry example to really make this click. For Cusa, in the realm of the infinite, the difference between a curve and a straight line just completely dissolves.
Think about it like this. An arc of a small circle is, well, it's obviously curved. But now, imagine the arc of a circle the size of planet Earth. From our perspective, standing on the ground, that curve seems like a perfectly flat, straight line. The bigger the circle gets, the less curved any piece of it seems.
And here's where it gets really cool. If you follow that logic all the way out to its final conclusion, the circumference of a circle with an infinite radius would be a line with absolutely zero curvature. It would be a perfectly straight line. In the infinite, curvature and straightness become the exact same thing. And Cusa took this radical logic and just applied it to everything. In what he called the absolute maximum, or God, the greatest thing, is also the smallest thing. Absolute darkness is also infinite light. Motion is actually a form of rest. And in an idea that sounds a lot like modern physics, distinction and indistinction just merge into one. Plurality is just another form of oneness. It's wild stuff.
So this wasn't just some abstract philosophical game for him. This whole framework led Cusa to some astonishingly modern conclusions about the universe itself, conclusions that put him way, way ahead of the scientific establishment of his day.
Applying his logic of the infinite to the cosmos, Cusa made this profound statement. Think about it. If the universe is infinite, it can't have one single center, because any point could be considered the center. And if it has no edge, no boundary, then its circumference is literally nowhere.
And just think about what that means. If there is no absolute center, then it's totally meaningless to say the Earth is the center of the universe. He argued that the Earth is just a noble star like any other, and that it has to be in motion. This was a direct shot at the accepted church doctrine of his time.
And this timeline just puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? In 1440, Cusa is writing about a moving Earth in a boundless universe. It takes more than 100 years for Copernicus to publish his model, putting the sun at the center. And it's another 50-plus years after that when Giordano Bruno is tragically executed for promoting similar ideas about an infinite universe. Cusa was thinking these thoughts when they were basically unthinkable.
But here's the twist in his story. For all his genius, his cosmological ideas had almost zero influence at the time. As far as historians can tell, neither Copernicus nor Bruno even read his work. He was this brilliant but basically isolated voice. It wasn't until the 1800s and 1900s that scholars rediscovered his writings and basically said, whoa, wait a minute, this guy was a foundational figure, a true pioneer of modern cosmology.
So what can a 15th century cardinal's philosophy really teach us today in our own crazy, fast-paced world? Well, as it turns out, quite a lot. His ideas feel more relevant now than ever before.
We live in an age where we have access to a seemingly infinite amount of information, but a lot of the time we don't feel any wiser for it. Cusa's Learn to Ignorance offers a powerful antidote. It's a reminder that true wisdom isn't about having all the answers. It's about intellectual humility. It's about understanding the limits of our own little polygon-like minds as we stare at that huge, infinite circle of everything there is to know. So, in a world that seems to reward absolute certainty, I'll just leave you with this question. What's the real value of knowing with confidence exactly what you don't know?